welcome back. Today we have another lovely episode of Across the Indiverse for our second season. That's it, season two. Today I am joined by a lovely designer here, the lovely Nora Jean Haynes from Double Summon Games. How you doing today?
I'm doing well enough. Came in here and hopefully I'll be of any help.
Look, we like to do some background checking, and we were pretty sure, there's like a lot to get from you, and like just in the chat we've had before we hit the live button, I already know that there's going to be a couple of tangents that we'll go across. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. But before we get started, I am Dylan from Indieverse, marketplace, online, independent tabletop games, role-play games, everything and anything you can get under the sun that is outside of crowdfunding and Kickstarter. And self-publishing. That's the last bit there. So yeah, if you want to check out some of the latest and greatest new games from independents all across Australia and a couple across Europe, one or two in the US as well, come check us out. We'll have links down below. We'll also have links to the lovely Double Summon games and anything else that we have from Nora as well. But let's get started straight into it. So, give us a little intro. Tell us about yourself, how you got into game design. Just give us the 411. Who's Nora?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Nora. I came into this because I was someone who liked making things. Basically, I wanted to have types of games that didn't exist, and I had the experience to try and do it. I sat down, I come from a design background. My degree was in graphic design, experience design, media design, and thought I could tackle that. Now I've been in the space for about 5 years now, growing some of that experience. We're working with publishers deeply. Double Summon Games started with Perfect Draw, a TTRPG focused on card game anime style content. That's done very, very well. Since then, we've worked on Despair Dilemma, a game that's sort of like a death game anime thing. And then there's a few other projects that are currently with publishers or that we're working on secretly behind the back. So those are done often, but will be announced officially sometime soon. But I come from a marketing background in my day job. And that's where I thought I would be more useful here, because I think there's a lot of people who, if you're coming into tabletop design because you want to make art or you want to just have some fun, there's who cares about marketing? That's not anything. But I think a lot of people come in here wanting to make a product, wanting to put something out there, get other people to play it, put something up on crowdfunding or self-publishing or whatever, stuff like what you do at Indiverse. But that's hard if you don't know what you're doing with marketing. We were able to take ourselves as people who, we're unknown. We didn't do anything beforehand. I started doing this basically right after my first job out of university, after, COVID hit, and we started really hammering down on some of the designs that we've been working on that we thought had a lot of potential. And having a experience in marketing and how to build communities, how to actually turn that into a successful sale, a sales pitch, was essential for us having the success that we've been able to have.
It's fantastic and fascinating to have someone who comes from like the other side of the aisle. Like we've chatted with people who are teachers, programmers, designers by trade, teachers, educators. Like there's everyone like outside of that key part that everyone needs and everyone also hates to do, which is the marketing side of things. So
that's one of my favorite parts. But I guess that's why I work at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, there's actually a bit of advice that my professor, when I was back in university, he gave that I think was really important. I think this is true for board game design as well, which is if you do anything in any way artistic, that can't be the only thing you do, or you will be incredibly boring and you will make shit. You have to be someone who's got other hobbies. You have to be someone who's got other experience and coming from things in a different perspective. If you make video games, you can't just be someone who plays video games. You need other shit that you're into. If you make board games, I think that's the same. If you do marketing, that's the same. Otherwise, you're coming at things with the same general perspective. You're just retreading. And I think that's one of the advantages of, a lot of people coming from board games are people who can be from those very diverse backgrounds. One person's a dentist, and another person is a marketer, and another person is someone who makes fans. And that's brilliant.
So what, I can't wait to see the game that comes through someone who designed or engineers like fans, whether they're like ceiling fans or like PC fans, server fans. Like that's going to be an interesting time. I think
this is the thing. I think the best board games, especially when we're talking about we'll go into this later because I do think this is actually really important, is the best board game comes from doing something very original, and the best game, TTRPG as well. We come mainly from a TTRPG background, at least for what was already been released, but we also, we run a lot of those playtests here at the with the TGDA, and I run playtests here in SA with other groups. But I think that when you're coming with a very specific set of experiences and you're using that, you're leveraging it, you're making it the main thing that you're thinking about, you get to create something that's original. That's incredibly important for actually making yourself stand out.
I can't agree more, especially when it comes to, look, there is going to be a limit to how many like unique mechanics that you come out with. Like that, like there's going to be things that everyone's going to be like, people who come along and like, oh, it's kind of like this, but kind of like that. But there's got to be something that brings that flair in. And whether it's like you highlight or pillar a specific mechanic in a way that other games haven't done before, or whether you've got like a stylization that works well, or just something a little bit off center, it's really important.
That's where I think it becomes really important. So I think, I was talking about before about the marketing pitch. I do think that is the very, very core of what you need to do if you want to make a game that's going to be successful, either through self-publishing ads. If you don't have an existing audience, if you've got an existing audience, you're popular for something else, or you've already made a bunch of games and people already know your name, that's great. You can come in and you can say, well, I've made a Euro about this, or I've made a deck builder about that. People are going to be interested because you've done it, and that's fantastic. That's great. But if you don't have that, you need to be selling your game and not yourself. Being a good game isn't good enough, That's great for after you've sold it. People playing your game now, they're going to word of mouth it around. You absolutely want to make a good game still. But it's the most important part of getting those people who will tell other people to buy your game is to have a pitch for your game. And there are a couple of ways of doing that. We were just talking about coming in with a unique set of experiences. And here I've got this, we're not doing another Euro about making a civilization or making a whatever, wow, it's war again. Wow, it's Rome again.
Yeah.
We're coming in with the specific situation of, I'm someone who's worked in I'm trying to think of like an interesting industry that isn't something that like I do or you do. Like I'm the person who designs fans, and we're gonna have a whole Euro about what does that look like. That's weird. That's a niche.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple of ones come out recently that were like, actually, I wrote down some of these because I wanted to mention them. I think Hegemony was a really big recent one about people. Those were made by people who were like political experts talking about like class struggle.
Yeah,
and that coming from people who were experts in that space gave it a lot of really good value. And that was the core pitch. When they said, okay, why our game next to the 500 other Euro games next to it, all their kind of coiny games in this case. It was, we're representing a social class struggle in a real way, based on real data and experience. And that's valuable. But there's other ways you can do it as well. I think that one of the most important things you can do is to recognize things that don't exist yet, but still represent a tangible market. So an easy example for us is like Perfect Draw. We know if there wasn't a card game anime style TTRPG, we wanted to make it, and that was part of why we wanted to make it, is I wanted to play it. So being able to say, well, this doesn't exist, then building off of that of, well, I made it exist. And there's now an existing market that I can then pitch that to. The pitch is card game anime TTRPG that you can make your own cards in as the additional part. But that's for another part of the pitch. That's a more complicated step. That is already a pitch that is now that sets it aside next to other games on the market next to it.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about Sorcery TCG beforehand.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting example of one that really hits into the other way you can do this, which is to look at pain points. Are you familiar with pain points as a concept?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
In design,
okay,
yes.
Like, so for people who might be listening who aren't familiar with like the product design space, a pain point is something that is identified about like the user experience or how something works that people who use it have issues with and would prefer to be fixed. These are especially useful in situations where you're trying to create like a, someone wants to search up, where can I find, a fan that doesn't make a loud noise, for example. I don't like that fans make loud noises, and I want one that doesn't make a loud noise. That's a pain point, and then you have the opportunity to solve that. Sorcery TCG is a game that looked at the TCG market. The TCG market in the indie space, famously difficult. Famously difficult.
Yeah.
But what they were able to do was by finding a very specific niche. In this case, people who had been playing TCGs for a while and felt that that TCGs they used to love in their weird, older, jankier sort of period were now too clean. They were able to say, what if we made a janky one again? And that made it more unique. That made it stand out against not just the other games in their level, but also every other game that already existed. It doesn't look like Magic the Gathering. It doesn't look like that. And it's specifically saying, hey, if you're the person who wanted Magic the Gathering, but it's janky again, well, here's your game. Here is this. That's perfect for you.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that we've looked at when we turned up to events and wanted to sell, so we've done a couple of booths for like TTCon, CanCon, and I've just applied for Conquest today for the games market down here in Melbourne. And one of the things that we like to ask people, because we take games that we support for the designers who obviously can't make it to everything because we're going into state, and we ask them, like, if you were going to give us a quick 5-second sales pitch, I want you to tell me what your game is it's like this, but does this better. So like, we were talking about a beautiful game that I'm absolutely cannot wait to take this out to play again at hopefully Conquest and get a table for it. Crane, the Fractured Empire. So it's like a TCG, like Magic the Gathering, except you can have a 6-player game in less than an hour. It's simultaneous, so you're not waiting for turns, and it's super snappy race to the bottom. So everyone's out.
I think that's really good when we're talking to other designers as well. But I think when we're talking from a marketing perspective, it's actually very important to not make the comparison the only thing. You absolutely want that as your grip line.
Yeah.
That's what people know. When you say, if you're doing anything in the TTRPG space, for example, despite how annoying it is, you do kind of need to say, this is like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, when we do our ads for a TTRPG, we need to put in, it's Dungeons and Dragons, cross with Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah. Wow, isn't that really cool?
Yeah.
Even though that's not really what it is, but in people's minds, when they're thinking, what does Dungeons and Dragons cross with Yu-Gi-Oh mean? It means TTRPG, and that's the important part there.
Oh, yeah.
But you do need to have your pit. I think it's important to look back at first principles and not just on, well, you like a deck builder, or you like a Euro, or you like I'm trying to think of other deck builders and Euros are the ones that there's plenty of at this point.
Yeah.
Or you like a legacy game, or you like a campaign game, and if we assume that someone isn't a fan of those things already and isn't already familiar with the genre, why would your game be interesting? Because otherwise, all you're doing is pointing yourself to everything else in the room. You're setting yourself up for a bad comparison. People love Dominion. People love like Race for the Galaxy. And if you're saying, well, it's like a deck builder, but you can do it in an hour, it's like, well, Dominion, I can also do it in an hour. Or if you're doing, it's a deck builder, but it's got more synergy. It's got more synergy than any other one. It's like, well, I actually think that I actually like the way that each card is individual in whatever. Or it's like a deck builder, but everything's simultaneous, and then it's like, but I actually kind of like we do the turn-based structure. You're setting yourself up for comparison that I don't think is going to serve you necessarily very well outside of the very, very core pitch. At least that's my take there.
Yeah, it's definitely a compounded thing, because like the rest of the pitch, like the rest of what, because most of the games that we demo, I own copies of and have played to death a lot of them. So getting the rest of it is like that, is the easier part. Like understanding like what bits of the draw in, what really like the experience at the table, which is a big thing that we encourage people. It's like, don't tell people the rules. Like you can do it if they ask for it, but tell them what experience they're going to have. Are they going to table flip because they're playing a game like Uno that's just going to be like every turn is like, take that. Like
the really important part is not just tell them what it is, because I think this is where a lot of designers get tricked into it. They start describing what it is instead of why this game. Because when you're the one who's sitting here and you're working on a game for fucking 400 hours and you've been deep into this and this is all you've been thinking about for 2 years, and you come out to it's like, well, I'm describing what it is. This is the important part to me, or I'm describing the thing that's fun to me as the designer. That's another thing where people get tripped up on is like, well, it's got a bunch of really unique cards. It's got a bunch of really cool, unique synergies and effects. I don't know that. I don't care. I need to know why this is unique compared to the other, especially for a convention, the other 500 things I can be playing.
Yeah.
We were talking about some other examples. I think I actually wrote down some others here. I think one that really stands out to me is like a really early success from like Kickstarter. Really early was like, do you remember Boss Monster?
Yeah, hell yeah. That's a
Yeah,
classic.
yeah,
Absolute
that's like
classic.
old at this point. And you know what's really notable about that one? The people who made it were not game designers at the start. They didn't know. They later would come into like the subreddit and be like, "Hey, we're the Boss Monster team. We're not actually that experienced in board games." And that's great.
Gotcha.
You know, they were able to make something that people liked, and that's fine. But what really worked for it and was that they came in and they were able to create a game that hit onto and it looks different than any other game and hits onto an audience that didn't exist in any other game.
Yeah.
It's hitting onto the retro gaming audience, hitting into gamers that should obviously transfer well into board games.
Yeah.
But before then, board games weren't really tackling that as a realistic audience. And now a couple other groups also do that. I think this is one of the things that Level 99, which is a group that we work with a lot,
Yeah.
does
Yep.
very, very well. And a few others, especially as the sort of online nerdy space is sort of built up as the core audience. It's gotten a lot better than before, where a lot of this stuff was coming secondhand from stores. But I think having that sort of what makes you different and why do you stand out, it doesn't have to actually be that meaningful. It can be the same type of game. But having the reason that yours will stand out next to other people is incredibly, incredibly important. And sometimes I think this is the important thing. It can be completely arbitrary. A lot of games, if you have are based around their art and how their
Yes.
art stands out uniquely. I mean, Flamecraft was a really recent
Oh,
success on
yeah.
that. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Root to some extent, although that obviously comes with Cole Worley's name behind it, even at that point. But the advantage of if you have a skill, I think is the important thing. If you have a skill and you can lean into that skill, I don't think it has to be art. I
Yeah.
think for some games it can be, hey, no, I'm a story writer and I know how to write a story. I'm going to use those skills. Triangle Agency is a TTRPG that did really, really well. It's really cool. It's got, some ups and downs, but that's everything, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the things that the Triangle Agency people who made it that they said is their experience was in writing PR statements, writing like HR statements. So when making a game, they used that skill to turn it into something that was more unique than other games trying to tackle this. Ultimately, this is in a very similar space to games like Delta Green, where
Yeah.
it's about spooky, crazy SCP style nonsense, X-Files style nonsense, Warehouse 13, whatever. But by making it more like, okay, let's play up the HR business angle. It's playing at a different audience. It's playing at people who the appeal of this genre is different to them than the appeal that they're already playing into. And I think you can look at a lot of genres like this. We've got a billion fantasy games in the space here. Can you make a fantasy game that isn't playing into the appeals that hit the D&D player who wants to play the class fantasy, or isn't playing into the fantasy that you get from the Lord of the Rings fantasy, of the pastoral fantasy?
Yep.
What other types can you play into? And I think we started to see some of these finding there's been a couple of successes in the, hey, what if it was a bit more of like a JRPG? That's been a big boom right now. That's a separate sort of fantasy. And I think finding those different appeals, even within something that is fundamentally an extremely popular space within gaming, board games specifically, can be very, very useful.
Yeah. It's so hard, and getting the perfect pitch for your game compared to somebody else's. I wish that there was a golden rule for it. And there might be. Maybe I just don't know what it is yet. But giving everyone the same advice feels like such a bad thing to do. But I think you've nailed it before. And what stands you apart? One of the questions that I often ask, when does someone say, this is really fun? When do you see that light bulb go from, oh yeah, I'm learning, to oh, and you can see it. It's not something you have to ask for. Just watch the people playing the game as they're playing.
I mean, that's the thing is,
massive
a
difference.
lot of the time you will know it will be ideally, and a lot of the time you'll see it when's the first time they say this is really cool? Sometimes it's at the pitch. Sometimes it's at when you show them the cool little gimmick.
Yeah.
But I also think this is the important thing is, I think the easiest way to make a game with this in mind, and probably the best thing the best tip I would give to if you're designing something, is to have what you want this to be as your goal for your design.
Okay.
When you're designing something, you want to have this in mind. What is the thing that's going to make me stand out? That should be at the core of every decision you make while you're designing. because otherwise you're kind of having to make it up partway through. And that means it's not going to be as fundamental. You can backwards yourself into it sometimes, but then you're also at this stage where you backwards yourself into it, but half the game's not around that. It's not the most important.
Yeah.
It's the one cool element. You'll see a lot of these games come out where it's like, you got one, I'm fundamentally, not trying to harp on deck builders and Euros, but it's the easiest example of a genre where there's a lot of things. You've got a deck builder and a Euro, and they're fundamentally a very similar game to most of them, but they've got one gimmick mechanic that makes them stand out a little bit. And that's great, but then you also spend 80% of the game with that not as the focus, not as the thing you're pulling it towards.
Yeah.
And the rest of the game mechanics aren't necessarily playing into that being as important. It also helps that when you have a design with that sort of design goal, you're designing it with the audience you're trying to shoot it to in mind, which I think is incredibly important for effective marketing when you don't know what you're doing. If I'm designing a game where, I'm trying to make a magical girl game, let's say. I want to make a magical girl game, and I know there's a couple of these out in the market, but the way I want to pitch it differently is I want to make one that's more like a Precure, or more like, the sort of kids show magical girl game where a lot of the ones that are being made now are very Madoka Magica. I'm wanting to make it very, very cutesy. How can I instill... I know that there's an existing audience for that. There's people who love that shit. So how can I make the game feel with that? What can I do to enhance that feeling? Instead of coming from just, I want to make a magical girl game, where I can end up making that possible. Now, every decision I can make while designing can come from, well, I need it to be this. I need it to make this so it can be the best for this possible. And if I do that, now I've got a pre-existing audience. I've got the people I can advertise it to, and I can say, I have made you the thing that doesn't exist yet, but I think, and therefore, since I might be a fan of that, assumably, a whole bunch of people over there also do think should exist.
Yeah.
You don't want to design something for just... God, this is a bit of a slight tangent, but I think is really linked and important to the point.
Very, yeah.
I've seen this thing happen a lot with designers when we've done playtests, where I've done a few video game playtest people, I know a lot of people who work in that space, and obviously also in tabletop, where they will come in with a really unique angle. One game I saw was something about, I want to make a game about my experience as an immigrant. And that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, when they playtested the game to us, they mentioned how they softened a lot of the mechanics that were really harsh and were really, like punishing, even though they were realistic, because they were worried that people wouldn't like it if it was more realistic. Similarly, in a lot of games, I saw someone, I had a friend who was making a game, and they wanted to really talk about their experiences being someone with sociopathy. And they wanted to really represent that in the game, about how that feels, how do you wrangle with that, and make that what their main character's doing. And then they wanted to remove that from the game, because they were afraid that would make it too niche, and make it too much just there. And this is the thing which I really want to... I think this is the most important lesson, is that if you make something that's... I think this is a lesson you get if you're looking at the biggest people in these spaces making what they're making, where they can make something that is, if Nintendo or Asmodee makes a game and they say, we're going to follow up on a trend.
Yeah.
We're going to make a roguelike deck builder. We're going to make the new Legacy game. We're going to make whatever. That's fine, because they have that cachet. You don't. This is the most important thing, is you don't, and that means things are very, very different and better for you.
Yes.
Because if you don't have that cachet, the most important thing to remember is you don't need to make everyone like you. You need to make 1,000 people love you. You need to make 1,000 people adore this, and that means being unique. And better yet, that means doing what you want to do anyway, what you love anyway, because you are not unique. There's 1,000 people like you, and they want the same thing.
Yep.
Your game is going to be more interesting, and it's going to activate better with more people if you do this is what it genuinely feels like to be an immigrant. This is what it genuinely feels like to have sociopathic, medical sociopathy. And that is going to make you actually stand out and be more unique. And you can't unwrite yourself for the sake of a audience that doesn't really exist and probably isn't going to play your game anymore.
Yeah, and if you just fall into that same pitch of like, oh, I'm going to take the things that make it unique and different, it's like, what are you left with? You're left with the same mechanic set for that genre style of game that everyone else has got. So where do you make that stand? Yeah.
Really important thing is, if you're just making the same thing everyone else has done, I'm sorry, but it is true that you are not the single most experienced and best designer making that kind of thing. Like, you're pretty skilled. You've got your own unique angles, and that's great. Everyone does. No one is the best designer at any given thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think Slay the Spire 2 came out, and that was pretty great. Also, I think that it was not my favorite roguelike deck builder.
Okay.
Because I prefer other different things. I really like the Bazaar. I think the Bazaar is great, but that's the whole other thing.
I think that's on my listing. But yeah, okay.
I love it. But this is to say, that's because these are all trade-offs. And you are not going to be the person coming in with your first design and making something that's better than the titans of this space in any fundamental way, unless you are doing something unique. And this is where your design has to come from, I want to make this. I want this to exist. Not from, I want to make a game, or I want to make a popular thing, or I think it would be, hey, what if we just made another Vampire Survivors like? It needs to come from, I wish there was a game that did this. Or, I wish that, what would you want to play, you know? What would you want to be doing?
Oh, man, I cannot agree more. And like, I can just tell from like how emotive you are that like it's something that you've seen, it's something that you, and I felt it as well. Like having the same game again and again never really catches me. But and I find it really strange that for me, what draws me to a game is sometimes art, is sometimes mechanics, is sometimes like just the experience I expect to have. Like I never find myself like I am this type of like, oh, I'm going to get drawn in by this thing or that thing. Sometimes it's different. So I think that you also, and I know there's already been a lot of advice here, but one of the big things you can always, I think, rely on is the fact that even if you have that 1,000 people that love you, they're probably not all going to love the exact same thing as everybody else in the space there. Because one person might just like that unique piece you got. Some person might like that unique piece because it interacts with a mechanic that they already sort of really like. So like having something that's built on a great foundation, but still lets you stand apart is so important. It's
the
so
other important thing about it is like, it's okay. You don't, this is probably means for people who have already succeeded to some points. This is advice that's not too useful to most people who are looking at advice things.
Yeah.
But like, when you got those 1,000 people, it's okay to make a thing that's not for half of them. Because that's also how you get another half of people who are interested and are following you because they like this other aspect. And now they're excited about that. You need to make the things that make you excited, that are unique. And then you also need to make them good, of course. That's the other discussion, but everyone's talking about how to make games good.
Yeah. That's it. We're trying to see clear from that. There's hundreds of thousands of people who are telling people how to make fantastic games. But yeah, we've got to think about what happens after that, because making great games is only half.
Yeah, this is the thing is, I think most games are good. I'm gonna be completely real. And people like to say that, like, okay, so my favorite part of the year, and this is coming up, so I'm very excited, is Steam Next Fest every single time.
Yeah.
Because I love to download every single demo, as much as I can at least, and just play all of them for like 3 days straight. And it's great. I genuinely think, and this is one of the things that I really love, is I think all of them are, the ones that are bad are the ones that are just doing the same thing. The ones that are good are the ones that are weird, and that's always fun. A game is always fine. A game is always good, even when it's bad. Because there's something that you can love from it. Even, like, you see, like, my little brother, he likes making, like, little stupid games, and so do a lot of his friends. They'll send them to me sometimes. You know what? They're fine. They're cute. They're interesting. A game is fun. A book is fun. Music is fun. It's fine, and there's something to love about. Someone will be able to love it. Someone will be able to love you. So, a game is a person.
Yep.
Someone will love you. Someone will love your game. That isn't what matters. Is about being lovable. It's about finding the way to make that reach the right people. Once you know what it is that you're making, you can make it reach the right people, And that's where having that goal is really important. And if you want, this is the separate thing between, like, why I said at the beginning, hey, if you're making this for art, if you're making this for fun, completely ignore all the marketing advice. That shit doesn't matter. You can just make a fun game.
Yeah.
But we have to assume that every game that gets made ever could be loved by someone.
Oh, yeah.
At which point you have to say, how am I reaching the people that will love mine? Not how do I tell people that mine is the best? You're not winning that one.
No.
It's like, I think this is also like the crazy thing that happens all the time. Is like, we were talking about TCGs before.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
you see this like real like pig fighting around like MTG fans hate Yu-Gi-Oh fans, hate Pokemon fans, hate everyone because they like what their game does
Yeah,
and think that that means it's innately good instead of the thing that they like about it.
yeah, yeah.
People like to say Yu-Gi-Oh's whatever, combo strings, whatever. The people who play Yu-Gi-Oh today, they love that shit. That's
Oh
their
yeah.
favorite part.
Oh yeah.
That's why they're doing it. And no matter what, someone will love it. If you can reach those people, and reaching those people means figuring out how to find them.
Yep, yep. And that's the other half of it. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to pick your brain on, because I know that like finding the audience is the hard part. Because like you say, there are literally thousands of games that come out of crowdfunding every year. That's just out of crowdfunding. I don't actually, I say that out loud. I don't know if I know many games that don't go through the crowdfunding route these days. As like
I mean, aside from the huge publisher ones, where it's like, okay, here's Wormspan. No, Wormspan did come through Kickstarter.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, they did that to start with. I don't know if they've done it for every iteration beyond that, but it definitely started there. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things start there. There are games that come out not through there. I know that again, we work with Level 99. They released a couple of games, usually in their like small games library every once in a while.
Yep.
Through not a Kickstarter. But and we can talk from a marketing perspective here. There's a reason we use Kickstarter now, and that's because not only is it just very, very useful as a marketing tool, gamers expect it at this point. This is where gamers are looking for new games. If you're not putting it through Kickstarter, your game is getting missed. And part of this is due to, obviously Kickstarter eats a lot of it, but also COVID really created that.
Yeah.
Because gamers aren't going to stores as much anymore. They're not looking at what's coming into stores. And this is partially a problem of the way that just board game stores work in general is because of the way printing runs work. You are not having a release in the way that like a video game does. When the new bloody Mario game comes out, the new Pokemon, the new Zelda, whatever, when it comes out, it is coming out on a day. And that is not true at all for any board game. Even the biggest one, I'm trying to think of what like the biggest board game would be, aside from like a TCG, like MTG or whatever. Those do have those specific release dates.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like a big board game, a new expansion for Dominion, a new expansion for Catan or whatever, those will come out. It won't matter. It'll come out whenever, and the game, they will have it in stock or not.
Yeah.
You can't. This is the way that you build. Through a crowdfunder, you can build a community because that's where people can buy it at a single specific time and they can build that sort of hype. And you can't do that around hey guys, guess what? We're doing our hype scheme around, it's coming out now. Yeah. Well, it's not in the store that's near that guy, so whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. And now you've wasted 60% of your ad budget because if you're not in exactly big cities in the US, it's not in stores right now.
Yeah. And like the accessibility, like you say, geographical limitations are one of the big things, and like it can be importing.
We as Australians, I'm sure.
Every Australian who's ever been like, hey, let's get a pool together so we can all get this Kickstarter campaign, but not all of us are paying shipping together. You all know, we've all done it too many times for my liking. It is the case, like, but the same thing is like stuff going out as well. Like it costs a lot for designers here to send stuff to the US, the UK.
Yeah,
it's just expensive.
Board games are ultimately really, really niche. Is the important thing to remember, and I think a lot of people forget this. TTRPGs too.
Niche.
The trick to them is they are, because people really love them, they can sustain people working in them, and that is fantastic. But that is only working because people are working through this model right now. It's sort of like, how the film industry has sort of cat-exploded because of crowdfunding. Not crowdfunding, because of streaming and all that.
Yeah.
But who wasn't doing that was the people who were already building their models around streaming. And the fact that we can build our models around this crowdfunding state where people are doing it, it allows us to work from your really small streaming services, you're like Dropout or whatever. They can sustain on a very small audience that is dedicated, because that's all you need. There's the thing that goes around to a lot of design circles here, which is for a full-time, if you are a studio of 4 people and you sell a game for $80, you can get a year's wage for each person, off of 1,000 sales. if we're just talking about, no other expenditures, no other marketing, no other whatever. But that's very, very small in the grand scheme of things. 1,000 people is so small. And if we're talking about like things where it's like, okay, I'm ultimately a one person. Me and my partner, we just do this together. We're two people. And we produce smaller things. We only need 1,000 sales from a given thing. We've now made our money back for a year if we do a project in a year.
Yeah.
If you're a single person, and hell, if you're doing this part-time, goddamn, you only need maybe 20, 50 people to buy your thing. You've made a profit. You've spent your time well. And that's all you need to shoot for. It's easy to get caught up in what success looks like in the public sphere. Success is Balatro, Stardew Valley. It's the games that people know about. And it is not. Success is being able to consistently hit that small niche group of people. And that's where you need to be shooting for. I think you were talking about before, one of the things you want to ask about was finding that audience.
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is where I think it's really important to have those designs at the beginning, because these audiences exist that aren't being served. We were talking about Boss Monster earlier as an example.
Yeah.
There were people who were into that sort of style who would love to get into board games, but haven't done that. We were talking about Sorcery before, a game that for a type of TCG player, they want something that's more janky. We're talking about Hegemony, where people who are interested in this space don't know about it, but are already board gamers. They want to know it. Flamecraft, someone who really likes this art style and isn't being served by board games. One of the best things to do if you're moving into this stage and you've got your pitch is to take that and then consider what are the audiences that when I do my ads, when I do my building my community, what are these groups? We were talking about the magical girl game that you can make. I now know if I'm making the fun, happy-go-lucky magical girl game, I can go into r/Precure and I can post about it there.
Yeah.
And I can spend time. You should spend time if you're doing this, actually getting yourself in the community and understanding it.
Yeah.
When we were running up to, obviously, one of the advantages of doing things that you love already is you're probably already in those spaces. In the lead up to Perfect Draw, I was already in TCG spaces, specifically around Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff. In the lead up to Despair Dilemma, I was already in spaces caring about things like Danganronpa or Your Turn to Die. And being able to then post in that subreddit or that community or that Discord server and say, hey, we've made something that you definitely think would be cool. Because I think it's cool. And I am you.
Yeah.
You're going to think this is cool, you can do that. And then the next stage is, okay, once you're getting those people to click through, how do you convert as well? That's a whole other discussion of conversion from there. I would say, quick tip, create a demo and make it very accessible. That's been one of the best things we've done through TTRPGs, especially, and this is not that common in TTRPGs, although it's kind of picked up, I think partially because of us, is making a demo kit that is entirely free and linked separately that, you go to it, you download it, and ideally those also contain links to a community space. You can kind of put where people can collaborate and see what's going on, talk to other people who are excited. The best way to get people excited about something is if one person who's excited talks to another person who's excited. That'll make them go insane. Suddenly people are bringing that to their friends, they become enthusiasts. That's fantastic. And because it's the thing that you are also excited about, you now have a cool place where you have people who are excited about the thing you're excited about.
I can't imagine something worse than that. That would be absolutely horrible for me, who's a giant fan of a couple of niche things.
That's only going to represent like a small portion. The people who are going to get trapped in that community is going to be a small portion of people who are enthusiasts and also looking for a community space or have a question or whatever. But those are your enthusiasts. Those are the people who are going to be advocates for it, who are going to pitch it, who are going to talk about it to their friends and on social media and whatever. And that's how you turn this sort of pitch into a long tail, especially once it's out and is good.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think in the indie video game space has become increasingly more clear, especially in like itch areas. People are doing this a lot where they're building up. The Next Fest is such an important period for games now, because that turns people into enthusiasts, because people just do that and then go into it. And we don't have that in board games yet. And it's kind of hard doing board games because you don't get to play them physically at a small scale very easily.
Yeah, it's tricky. A bit trickier.
You should take advantage of this if you're someone who's like a board game designer, because the skills are still transferable here. If you can look at one of those and think about look at the Next Fest things, look at what interests you, especially things that aren't branded or from big companies.
Yeah.
That's a
Yep.
whole other thing, and ask, why did this interest me? Look at the techniques they are using. Look at what their demo looks like. Look at what their cover looks like, how they're pitching it, what they're doing, and how they're pulling in people. They've got a Discord. They're asking people to go into it through there. They've got people signing up. They've got people going to the Steam wishlist. You need to be doing a lot of those same things, and you can as a board game, even without all of those advantages, partially because as well, you don't need to be as successful as that.
Yep.
It's fine.
Yep, for sure, for sure. One of those big things, and you talk about like last year, you asked like, oh, what did you have like for last year? I'm like, I remember falling in love with the demo for Blueprints, and I was like, oh my god,
Yes!
you're absolutely right. Like the amount of hype that myself and like a couple of guys on like the Friday when it opened up, we were just sitting around, like everyone was streaming their demos that they were playing, so we could like play a little bit, have a squiz like what other people were doing. It's the only way you get through everything that you want to check out. And all of us just were deadlocked nothing, and all of us was watching a mate of ours play Blueprints, and all of us have now. Actually, I don't think I've actually bought it yet. As hyped as I was like, I haven't got it yet. Maybe it's maybe I should edit that out. Oh no, it's great. I've played it many a times. It's an awesome game.
It's so good. It was my favorite game of last
year. Oh yeah.
But that's exactly the point. Is like, and part of what the Blueprints got to do, Blueprints is a great example, is it advertised itself as a unique thing. It is fundamentally a combination of two genres that are pretty popular, but it doesn't advertise itself like that. It's not saying, I'm a roguelike puzzle solver, a roguelike mystery game. No, it's saying, here's the unique thing. It's uncover mysteries in a ever-changing house.
Yeah.
And that is more interesting than just saying, hey, it's Myst as a roguelike. Which I think you would find a lot of the games that don't really do well when they come out, that's how their pitches sound. Hey, it's roguelike Myst, or what if this... Well, I mean, there's a ton of roguelikes in the video game space now.
Yeah.
And that's... For a lot of them, that's the only thing they're doing uniquely or how they're pitching it. And that's where it kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
But by having this love, and you can feel that love in a game like Blueprints, you can find what is unique about it and what matters. What is the core of this? What is the goal? And that sense of discovery and puzzle boxiness and, like weird escape roomness. Obviously Blueprints isn't based on Myst specifically. It's based more on a couple of very, very old do-it-yourself mystery books. And having that sort of love that isn't clear or obvious that for it to be a marketing pitch, but is something that you can find the core of and turn it into one is brilliant. But this is also to say, to find that audience, we are not so lucky in board games or TTRPGs to have something as obvious as Steam Next Fest. So instead, what you really, really need to do is find what groups you can show this to that will get to see it. And part of that can be your ad campaigns. You got a budget for that. If you can budget for some marketing ad campaigns. Now, to be clear, ads can be a bit of a waste of money if you don't know what you're doing. Do your research first. That's how you make your money back first. You need to be using the right keywords. You need to be doing that. Otherwise, you're just going to be feeding money to Meta or whoever. You need to be doing it carefully. I will actually recommend, if you know a target audience, Reddit ads can actually be very, very valuable for getting enthusiasts specifically, because Reddit is hyper-targeted in a very niche fandomistic way that is not true at all for Meta or even Google.
No.
Even if it's like you're not going to get as good of a number of conversions, your quality of conversions are going to be a lot higher, potentially.
And those high qualities are your advocates that are going to get there, like people that wouldn't convert from Meta to convert because you've got...
Well, I mean, a perfect draw. We did a couple of ads on the Yu-Gi-Oh! We did a couple of ads on Reddit. And some of those people ended up being streamers playing our game before it came out. Wow. Like, they messaged us and were like, hey, I'm a streamer. I want to run a actual play of your game. Can you give me a beta? And I was like, sure, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And they've already got to start building out that beta while we were in the campaign. That's brilliant.
Awesome.
Yeah, but you need to be considering where those groups are. Ideally, you want to build it for. We were talking about Slay the Spire earlier. You know what Slay the Spire was doing before it was a genre? The person who made it was part of the fucking Netrunner community. They were a person who was big in the Netrunner community.
Yep.
And they were able to pull on, hey, I'm making a card game that sort of feels like that, or playing with those sorts of mechanics, or playing with those experiences that we've done in the post Netrunner dying, trying to build our own things,
Yeah.
sort of space.
Yeah.
Pulled in a lot of their friends from that area to start building up the hype, start building out building that up. And because they were part of that community, they had a place to go. They had a place to talk to people and to grab people and to create those names that are going to be essential for the future of making anything.
Yep. I will say, big shout out to Null Signal, who have like tried to keep and kept Netrunner alive. I met them at PAX last year and got to finally play.
So
Netrunner.
Impressed that they were able to that they've gotten big enough that they're like at multiple conventions.
Yeah.
Like,
I love
huge.
it. I never got a chance to play because I was playing Magic back in those days. Like, yeah, look, we all can make mistakes, and look, I can admit it. But I got to play Netrunner for the first time with a buddy of mine at PAX. Like the first thing we did on the Sunday, because like we missed it yesterday. I want to do it first. I had such a great time. It's such an amazing game as well. I had to go and curse them at CanCon. I'm like, you have ruined my life for playing any other TCG because nothing quite hits just like that. And I'm usually not a one-on-one trading card game player enjoyer at all. But Netrunner, beautiful game. Excellent community behind it.
Really, really neat.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm saying is, if you're to wrap this all up into a few cohesive points, if you are a designer who wants to sell your product, have a pitch that explains why you are unique and what you are doing, who you are getting it to, find those audiences, and then make sure that you are in those audiences and able to pitch it to them. Look at what other games that are successful from new designers who don't have a lot of community are doing.
Yep.
And look at your skills and what makes you unique. Ask what you can do. Ask what you love, what you want, not what's already popular, what's already successful. And that's how you're going to stand.
Yeah. At a very core, at least like that's the starting blocks or like one of the avenues that you take. Yeah. That's awesome. It's great advice to give out. And I think what I really appreciate is like there is that uniqueness that you're trying to encourage. Like when you were talking about that person you met who had like a refugee game. I'm like, that should be difficult. It should be a little bit confronting. But when I go to that game, the person who's going to bring it to me, whether it's another player or the creator, they're going to tell me that this is the game I'm playing. So I come with that expectation. If it's not my vibe, I'm like, hey, sorry, it's not for me. Like, go in for people who are going to be like, oh, this can be really interesting or like really heavy or confronting. Like, people may want to see that sort of stuff and have that there. And to take it.
Yeah. Giving means that you can make a game that fits that pitch. If you're saying I'm expecting a heavy confrontational game, and you find out that it's kind of a light and breezy Euro, it's like, I might as well go play fucking Earth or Ark or whatever. You will find, I think. Oh, sorry. Yes, you were saying?
No, one of the big splashes that like hits a lot of those like I feel uncomfortable. It's also good is Night Shift, which I haven't had a chance to play, but I've heard plays exceptionally well. And for the subject matter of the game, I'm like, I'm glad that they didn't lean out of anything. And I haven't even played to see like how far down like that more sensitive material and that more adult content and that they've actually gone down. But I've heard people say like, yeah, it totes the line. Like it's right up to it. I'm like, wow, okay, great, like good. Like
that's genuinely awesome. And to say for people who haven't like heard of this game before, Night Shift is a game about sex work. And the experience being a sex worker in a sort of Euro-esque. I think it's worker placement, right?
Yeah. Worker placement.
But I think this is also one of the important things is you will, as long as you have that goal in mind, you can rely on those old reliable mechanics. That's fine. There's we do a TTRPG, you roll dice for a reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't roll dice for a reason as well. But this is why having that concept in mind is so important, because at every point where you're like, am I going to use this old reliable mechanic? Or am I going to have to make something new? The question can always be, well, is it fulfilling the goal that I had set out at the start here?
Yeah.
Is it doing the unique thing that I want this to be? Is it facilitating the fantasy that I'm trying to push? Is it facilitating that? And hey, that might end up you creating Dominion again. That's fine.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it from those principles, you will create something that has more heart than just saying, I'm starting point of what if Dominion but, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. And like you talk about like the pitch before, and this is something I wanted to circle back to because there's different types of pitch that I think is something that a lot of creators may not I think they understand, but how to break them apart and separate them and find out like what do I need for each part? Because like you talk about like a pitch when you go to a publisher is totally different to like when you're standing in at an event or whether you're advertising something on a video, whether you're just doing social media posts where you're paying
This
for
is the
everything. There's
thing
so many things.
that I will say is the details of those are different. But I do
Yes.
think they all come from what at core makes your game unique and why.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
when you're talking to a publisher, the difference is while talking to a publisher, you need to be pitching why this game will be successful.
Yes.
And when you're talking to a person, you need to be talking about why this game will be fun.
Mm.
But ultimately, that is still coming down to the core question is still what makes this game stand out next to the 1,000 other things I'm looking at.
Yep. Yeah.
The reasoning is different there, but ultimately, even when talking to a publisher, what they want to know is what they're going to be saying to the players, and that is a different voice. But it's similar to describing your weekend to your family member versus to your boss, or to your best friend versus to your boss.
Yeah.
You're describing the same thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you have to describe them with different intonation and tone and style and considerations. I'm not going to tell my boss that I was out drinking on Sunday. I am going to tell my friend because that's kind of cool. I'm not going to tell my boss about this little side mechanic, but I'm going to tell my family because that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It matters more to my boss that I spent the weekend moving because they know that I'm going to be a little bit tired tomorrow. But if I tell my friend that, it's like, yeah, whatever, we're not hanging out until next week.
Yeah. I love that framing. If nothing else, I love the framing that you put around it. It's like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to show the other wheel. Because it's the same wheel, it's just on the other side, so perspective is going to be a little bit different. And that was a horrible analogy. But...
This is why it's important to go over that concept we were talking about before. Your game's cool. Your game will be cool. Even if your game sucks, it's cool. You can make the worst game ever. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe this. It's about finding what makes that interesting and helping find the people that will love it,
Yeah.
I think there's the good saying people will say is, I think by the end of work I'm doing on a project, I come to, like, when you're sitting there and you spend 1,000 hours on a game or whatever, often I come out of it and I'll go through periods of, I fucking hate this thing. I love this thing, but I hate it. I hate everything about it. It's the worst thing I've ever made. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. But people love it for the parts that are interesting and are unique that I've then spent 1,000 hours fiddling with and I'm tired of and whatever. They haven't. Who cares? You've made a janky little platformer for your video. You're like a kid who's made a janky little platformer. Well, I think it's nostalgic when I look at something like that, and it's like, I like the jankiness. I like how it feels. I like that it's come from a sense of simplicity, etc. or whatever.
I had that, and like literally only a couple of months ago with Bellator for the first time, and like even playing like I played the physical copy, the extremely apparently limited run of the description. I'd never played the video game, but I played the tabletop game, which is beautiful, and I don't know if they're ever making it again. A friend of mine managed to snag a copy, and
here you played the tabletop version of Act 1 of Inscription.
Yes.
Like core mechanism before the game is insane to me and very funny.
I saw bits and pieces of people playing it, so I kind of knew what it was. I was like, I'm going to buy this at some point, and I'm going to play it because I like that style of game.
You've played Inscription now, right?
No, I still haven't. No.
You know the bit with Inscription you should play Inscription if you didn't immediately understand what I said when I said, the core bit of Inscription. Nope. Have you played the guy's other games before?
No.
Pony Island, The Hex?
Nope.
So, it's an ARG. This is an ARG game. It looks like it's a roguelike. It's an ARG game with a linear story in comparison to, like, Blueprints.
Yeah.
It rules. You know what? We're talking about Blueprints, best game of the year. Last year, Inscription was my favorite game of the year. The year when that came out. I'm just realizing because I really like games like other sorts of ARG-ish roguelike experiences. I wish there were more of them. This year so far, my favorite is the Yoshi game that just came out.
Hey, I've been so far out of Nintendo for a long time, but
So the new Yoshi game is a game about they just put you in a level with a creature. And they say, try to understand this creature by doing a bunch of weird things in it. It just interacts in different ways with its environment.
Okay.
And you're meant to spend time in the level, not trying to win the level, to try and understand it by making it interact with different things in different ways.
Okay.
And trying to understand its weird core mechanisms. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like Lingo, if you've ever played Lingo.
Yeah. It reminds me of like it kind of like a relationship sim where you're like trying and erroring to find out like what gels with this creature versus like a person, and like the discovery piece of that puzzle solving as well.
Based than most relationships.
Yeah.
It's more like a lot of those physics games, but as if they removed all of the. Imagine those like physics toolbox games that they said instead of telling you what each of the tools did, they said figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was the goal of each game. Each level was figure out how this mechanic works. And then those creatures show up in separate levels, and it's like, well, this guy does this thing. I bet when it makes that fruit, I can make that fruit interact with this guy in a different way. I should try that and see if it does something. And now I understand something more about this guy.
What I love, and I don't know if it's something that's as easily translatable to tabletop games, is that like teach by playing. Like it's such a beautiful thing when it comes to TTRPGs, because I think you nailed it before. Yes. Having that demo kit is like this is the slice. This is the vertical slice that like lets me show off all the best parts of this game and teaches you how to play it. Whether it's got a facilitating role in like a GM, and then you've got like pre-made characters and players that again show those highlights. Like,
you know what's the other part that's really useful about a demo kit is it also shows people who buy the game later. They can go see that and they can see, oh, this is what the game's meant to be. This is what the game's meant to look like. You know, the same reason that in a TTRPG you include an adventure sometimes in the back of the book or whatever. Yeah. But this can serve to do that without bloating the book with an adventure. Sometimes the players who do want that. I'm personally, this is my whole like weird thing about there. I think a lot of adventures in the back of the book, while essential, are also kind of badly made for that goal. And I also think a lot of you know how a lot of TTRPGs will include a section of just, here's what the play looks like. You can just write out a script of the play looking like. My take is, I think that's a bad way of doing it because it takes up a lot of space in a way that can be explained more concisely. At least that's my perspective. And that makes... And when you're having to do it through a script, you're actually obscuring that important information, those important examples. Where I think you can explain it through the mechanical intuitions of play in a way that I think, by comparison, board games have really honed in on. Board games are often much more complicated and don't have to rely on stuff like this because they know how to speak that sort of language. That's my perspective, at least.
I think the big thing for like with video games, it's like you have a genre of game and there's like an understanding of like what button does what, and there's like a consistency that you bring to the table, whether you go and change your own keybinds. Like you have an idea of what I'm going to move where, like I'm going to point at this thing.
At least if you're an experienced gamer.
Yeah,
there's a literacy to play that's been built up.
Yes, absolutely. And and we talk about those like generic mechanics for like bring people into your game, but still having that unique piece. Those generic pieces mean that you don't have to onboard people for like 30, 40 different mechanics. No.
We were talking about deck builders, for example. Yeah. Like, deck building is something that at this point, an experienced gamer, and if you're talking to experienced gamers, this is also the important thing to understand when talking about these sorts of things, is, okay, that's great if we're talking to an experienced gamer. If we're not, then we need to consider that we're still teaching this. But if I see a deck building mechanic, I now know, okay, I need to be making these considerations in mind. I want this to be thin and lean, unless there's something that's pushing me away from that. I want to be looking for synergies. I want to be looking for ways that what I am drawing and what that looks like. If I'm seeing a worker placement mechanic, I'm now considering, okay, what is the value of a worker and where I am placing it? What are the options and what happens when someone fills that space? Do I need to be considering what's happening on the other people at the table, for example?
And these are all core pieces. Like, that's the beautiful thing. Like, you just described like 3 different genres of game, and that's not even talking about the unique part of any of them for a specific game title. But I still guarantee that most people listening to this, and even myself, I'm like, yeah, no, I know these genres. Like, the thing that's going to catch me is that little flair, that unique bit that I can't get from this game or that game, or I've always wanted it. I didn't even realize I wanted it. And that's the beautiful thing. And like, TTRPGs, like, that's a whole kettle of fish. Like, I agree that an adventure, I prefer an adventure, probably not in the book, but if you have, like, say, 2, 3, like, free adventures,
I mean,
like,
this
little
thing
things,
is, I think your book, if we're talking about a TTRPG design, your book should include adventures, but in the sense of, it 100% needs to include clarity on what the game is and what a
Yes.
story in it looks like and what it looks like. And what it
Yeah.
does.
Yep.
Games that don't do that have an own separate problem. You don't need to have the adventure like, okay, we're just giving you a script.
Yeah.
Or like, here's exactly what you need to hit. Especially because for a few games this doesn't work. In the same way, it's like it'd be weird to say for Minecraft you need to play, you need to have an adventure map built in or a tutorial adventure map built in. No, that's not the point, you know, for a lot of them. But you do need to show what the goal is. You do need to show people what play looks like. You do need to show people what it is, especially because they're doing it without a computer system interpreting it for them.
Yeah, you got a person there.
Yes.
Hopefully.
You know, if you're not doing an adventure because your game doesn't work on adventures, you do need a session. You do need to show what a session looks like and make that very clear.
Yeah.
And then that's the building blocks that then the player that is essential for whoever's doing it. Like, this is what it looks like, you know?
Myself and Nick from the Ravens Ridge, we talk a lot. We do our TTRPG of the book of the month through their Discord, and we get on and record like our feedback between us, because Nick's obviously a fabulous designer for Caught in the Rain, and I have read way too many TTRPGs in my time and know what I really like, and I think I have a decent analytical mind for like the players at the table. Like I've DM'd 15 years now, which is like, yeah, forever DM, like, yep, I'm gonna get it branded on my forehead at some point. But like, there's something to it that's like and you spoke about it, like there's a thing to teaching someone how the book works, how the game's going to work. But one of the other big things that I find a lot of people struggle with is like after that point, it's also a reference book. And you talked about like bloating it with an adventure. I was like, cool, you're already adding all this bloat that is probably going to be somewhere in like either the back or like slowly segmented through the book. It's just going to be wasted pages for me when I'm like, I need
and
this
is the
thing
thing
now.
is like every time you do that, you need to be able to have. This is the thing is like we have a lot of people in our community who really wants us to like just make an extra book with a bunch of like bonuses and changes and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like. Okay, I'm a fighter. My options are not all here because there are 3 other books I need to check what the fighter options are.
Yeah.
And this can be fixed with databases, of course, but most games don't get to be D&D with a database like that.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating. And I don't want to have a situation where players are coming in and they're not getting to see all those choices there. I would prefer, this is my genuine take, if I was to want to add more options to something, I would prefer to do a new edition and just add those as part of the new edition. Or add new core options at a single decision point. If I'm going to do this, I prefer to add new classes rather than new options to existing classes. So those classes are cohesive.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, I'm looking at the small list of classes. Okay, there's 10 classes in this book, and then there's another 5 in this book and another 5 in this. The core concept is there. And that's the one decision point. And by that decision point, I'm probably not choosing it based on the details of the mechanics of that class, but rather my character concept. It can be a sentence that I can build it off of. And it's kind of fine because these are mutually exclusive from each other, and not in any way fixing or powerful. If, oh yeah, I didn't know that there was the alchemist in this class, because I played the potion smith in this other one, and it was close enough to what I was going for.
Yeah. I have a burning question for you then. So let's take a classless system. How would you deal with expanding, like, say, skills? Because that is the big thing when you go to classless. Like, you're just cherry picking out the things you want to make your character stand out. How would you introduce like a whole new set of skills, whether they're like themed to something specifically, or just great ideas for new ones?
I just wouldn't want it to be a game that needs to have that. If I was needing to add that, I would say it needs to be a second edition. Okay. Personally. Sure. In the sense of like, you know, obviously if you're saying like, GURPS gets around this by way of it being a system that you create as you're putting it to the table.
Yeah.
Deciding what you're doing and you're mutually re-exclusing it. When you give what you can do to the players, you're saying, okay, so I basically made a new TTRPG using GURPS. Here's the options.
Yeah.
And that's a different sort of experience there. But if I was playing, say, I'm trying to think of a good example of a good classless system that people would recognize on the top of their heads. Let's say I'm playing like a Mutants and Masterminds, I think is a classless system that's a good example.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that having so many of those options kept aside, especially if you're growing and you're having to pick them consistently and constantly, means that every time you're doing that, you're having to make these large-scale decisions. And to be fair, I think some people really love that stuff, and this is where we get back to, that's just not a game for me.
Yeah.
If you like that, if you like being that person, You like being that thing, and I'm making the game for me, not for the person who loves that sort of micro min-maxing for this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's great. You're allowed to do that. If I was making that game, I would say I wanted to make the first book be able to do everything cohesively that I thought this game needs to cover. And then from there, everything needs to be, if I am doing it, I need to make them mutually exclusive in some way to not overbloat what needs to be seen at any given point.
Okay.
I think, D&D tries to do this with you're in an official content thing, you're only supposed to use one splat book, for example.
Yeah.
But that's messy. That's
It
really
is.
messy.
It is.
Which is where a system that I really like, by comparison, is a game like Orcus, which is a build off of Fori, technically using some of the designers and then trying to expand on it and modernize it a bit. What it does is it segments out its free classless effects through little mini classes that you pick several of.
Okay.
So it would say, like, okay, I've got the power set of blood magic, or I've got the power set of this. And those are functionally, while it is classless, at different points I am able to hold onto a number of these pseudo-classless things. Lancer and, like, Fabular Ultima also.
Oh, yeah, how did I get past Lancer?
Like, by segmenting it into these major pseudo-classes, you create a sense of space that is mutually exclusive and is kind of fine if you don't have to touch it on. Instead of it just being everything everywhere, you've segmented it out with a sense of mutually exclusive choice that ideally is relatively comprehensive and relatively mutual and relatively valuable between each other. Okay, I didn't know about the Super Megazord in the Splat Book 4, but the Hydra in the main book is pretty interesting, is about as interesting and does something separate. I made that choice without knowing everything, but I still made a choice that was interesting, and I would have been making a choice between them no matter what, and I would have been hemming and hawing about them. And that helps a lot. Whereas I think if you have every choice there, if you can go through everything, there's this feeling of I need to know what everything is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not doing what is correct. I'm not doing what is optimal, especially if we're trying to be optimal, or what is more thematic. I like when those games give you points where you can expand out. I think you should have chances where you can expand out and pick through these things. But by keeping those segmented into small portions, so you don't have to do it all the time, it means that these books are something you check between every 5 sessions or 10 sessions instead of every session.
Yeah.
And especially on your character sheet, it is incredibly frustrating if your character sheet can't cohesively hold everything that's relevant to it. And a lot of these ones where you do it will be, okay, well, we've got this whole side system over here about, okay, what if you've got a squad? Mutants and Masterminds, I don't know what edition this was. It had like an option for if you built a mech in it. And that's a whole separate subsystem. Where then you're building powers for it. And now you need to consider, how am I going to represent this on my sheet while also representing all of that? And it can't basically keep track of it. The rules for this can't all be listed on my sheet.
Yeah.
So now I need to have that book on hand in case a rule relevant to that happens, as well as my core book, as well as, if the GM's got a GM book or whatever. I think that your books should have a cohesive, singular purpose, is my take there. If you're going to be a game with this amount of content, I think it would be good if your content or your content for like player builds of a certain way, it could all be in that place. And if you're going to have to look at those books all at different times, I think it's better off if you can limit the amount of times you need to look at it.
Very fair, very fair. It's always like a good, and it's just because it's the Coca-Cola of TTRPGs. Like using D&D as like the comparison point is always something I really stand to. And I say recently, it's probably been a couple of months now since I started playing a campaign of Cosmere, which exceptional core rulebook. There's a couple of things that I'm like, this studio has never made a TTRPG book before. Just some things that you don't know from just going to make a book versus making a TTRPG. And it's that little thing of like learning to a reference book. Like there's things there that aren't really innate if you're not a really avid TTRPG player, or you just haven't seen enough of them to see what makes them functional in what respect. But I will say that book, for a single core book, no GM book as far as I know, unless I'm going crazy, like exceptional book.
I think most indie games, if you do not have a company backing you, should be one core book, is also just the thing. You are not going to be able to, be multiple books unless you have a company behind you.
I have one final question for you. One final question. This is the tricky one. And I have so many more topics. We have to do this again, by the way, because there's so many things that I want to
happily, I'll come in with another core premise at some point.
Yeah, like I have some questions here that I was writing down mid-session. I'm like, I'm never going to get to these. Like, we're going to like 50 minutes. I'm like, oh, geez, this is going to take forever. But yeah, we have to do this again. This was so good. Thank you so much for jumping on board. I found it so thought-provoking, and we've already passed on all of the things that we've tried to talk about, but I'll ask you this final question. So you're a designer. You've made handfuls of games. You work for yourself. You work at publishing houses. You've done a whole bunch of different things. If you could take a single lesson, one lesson, not a conversation, single lesson from your brain today and implant it on the very first time you decided, I'm going to make games for a living. This is what I want to do with myself. And put that in, what would it be? It's a tough one, I know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the most important element of it. I mean, we talked about a few things already, which I would say I think are very important. Of like, hey, you know, make sure you've got a core goal. Make sure that you're doing this for yourself. But I'm trying to think about like the struggles that I specifically had. I think I'll say this: get other people to work with you. Is probably the one I would say. Work with other people, collaborate. I spent the first part of my career getting into game design, doing a lot of this myself and testing with testers that weren't on a, you know, like they were in the community but not there. But then when things really started to pick up and really work was when I collaborated with my partner, and now we do this together, and she's able to bring a different perspective onto it. And when two perspectives meet and they collaborate, that works better. The other thing I will say is playtest everything as many times as you can forever and never stop. Actually, no, this is going to be the one I'm going to say, actually. This is going to be the one. If you hate your game, that's not real.
Okay.
You know, I was mentioning before, is like, if you spend 1 billion hours on something, I end up hating it for, like, because I end up hating it. Like, I've done this so much. I hate the little thing about it I couldn't fix. I hate this or that, or I don't think that's as good as it could be. I wish I could spend another, like, 10 hours on this, whatever.
Yeah.
That shit's fine, no one cares. The shit that you're worried about isn't the shit that an actual player is going to care about.
Yep.
It doesn't matter, everything's janky, and that jank is sometimes what makes it unique and fun and exciting.
I can agree. I recently replayed the original Bard's Tale, which I know video game compared to a tabletop game, but still love it.
No, but
it's got 16-bit, 16-bit color palettes, giant block.
Correct to use video games in a lot of these board game discussions.
Yeah.
Because video games are something that every board gamer plays. But I think there are very few board games that every board gamer has played. Because we do not have as much... Outside of, like, the big ones, everyone's played Wingspan, everyone's played Catan, everyone's played Dominion.
Yeah.
Once you leave there, it's like, yeah, I've played this, that, and the other, and you've played that, this, and the other. And they're entirely different. You know? I did not, like... You were talking about Cosmere. Cosmere didn't really... I didn't really care when I saw its Kickstarter. And you're like, not to mean anything on it. It was just like, this isn't my type of game. This isn't my type of game. But also, we both knew about Blueprints. We both knew about that because everyone in the board gaming space is largely living within the subset of the video gaming space.
Yeah. Great. The Venn diagram is also almost a perfect circle there. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Well, it would be a perfect circle if video gamers played more board games. It's a circle inside of it.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit of outside overlap, but even then, you're still probably aware of it. The podcasts where people talking about video games are the same podcasts where people talking about board games are the same podcasts where people talking about video games.
Yeah,
they're gonna reference Slay the Spire.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna reference Balatro when that comes out. You know, they may not know about whatever niche game. Like, again, I'm someone who likes to play every board game style video games like those that come out of the board game space. Every board game person knows about them. Maybe not everyone knows about my specific kings or whatever, my favorites in that space. But you know about Balatro, and I can reference Balatro.
Yeah. You just flashed me back to Dokapon Kingdom, an old GameCube board game that was amazing, and I need to go find if I can get that somewhere now.
No, they did release that. There's Dokapon Kingdom Connect that came out. I've been meaning to get it, but the problem is I kind of want to play it with some people online. But that would mean I'd have to buy it. Everyone would have to have a copy. So I'm really waiting for like the really good Steam sale.
Yeah.
Where I can just get everyone to pick it up.
You know what the thing about board games that makes it better is you only need one copy most of the time.
Yeah. Well, you would say until...
There is exceptions to that now.
this is why TCGs are so successful. Is actually
Yeah.
secretly, and I do mean this genuinely, people like buying things.
Yeah,
Yeah. Buying
We-
shit is fun.
we sell therapy. We can condone it in the right appropriate amount. Yeah.
Look, I'm okay with you spending money for no good reason when it's my products.
Noted. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. We have been Indieverse across the universe. We'll have you back for another amazing episode. This was so good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.